So the National Strategy for Trusted Identities in Cyberspace was issued last year, April of 2011 specifically, by President Obama, really focused on three key issues, all of which are really focused on helping the public have more secure, more convenient, more privacy enhancing experiences when they go online. The first is really looking at the password and trying to come up with something that's an alternative to it. From both a security perspective, where passwords have really run their course. Last year, 5 of the top 6 vectors of attack in U.S. data breaches were all tied to exploiting different weaknesses of the password. Not to mention from a convenience perspective, where everybody in the country these days is being asked to manage 25 or 30 different passwords, all of them getting increasingly complex. It's a system that's become so unusable that most people just have 1 or 2 passwords that they reuse everywhere they go, which of course then fuels some of the attacks and the data breaches, because once you get a password, it's easy to have a key to everybody's systems. So between getting people more security and more convenience, giving the public also a chance to actually prove that they really are who they say they are when they're online, as opposed to being the proverbial dog on the internet, where it's hard for somebody on the other end of a transaction to actually verify they are who they say they are, and ensuring that these systems are developed in a way that doesn't hurt privacy, but in fact enhances it and gives the public more control over their information, more choices in who their information is shared with and how it's disclosed. These are 3 key benefits to the public from implementation of National Strategy for Trusted Identities in Cyberspace, or NSTIC as it's known. So NSTIC at the end of the day calls for an identity ecosystem, essentially a marketplace where all of us and our neighbors, our friends, our kids, our parents will all be able to choose from a variety of different types of more secure, trusted credentials that we can use every place that we go online. Coming up with this ecosystem is not the easiest thing to do. We're basically trying to catalyze a marketplace that doesn't exist. In fact, the market's tried to tackle this several times and has yet to succeed. I think a lot of the challenges really break down to 4 areas. One is interoperability. You have different strong credentialing solutions that are out there today, but there aren't really good standards for interoperability. We've made good progress in the last few years, but there's still more work that's needed. The second is usability. A lot of types of strong authentication technologies that have been out there in the past have been rejected by consumers because they've involved carrying around a token or a card or something else that people would not necessarily be inclined to carry with them. We're starting to address some of that right now through some great apps that leverage the power of smartphones and other mobile devices that people are carrying with them, but there's still a lot of work to be done in usability. The third is privacy, where there is not a great set of rules around privacy and how information should actually be protected in this identity ecosystem. And the fourth is liability, looking at what happens when something goes wrong. Even the most secure system can still be vulnerable to an attack from somebody who's got the time and resources to execute an attack. And so, rather than consider building something that would be hacker-proof, which is something that most security experts will simply tell you doesn't exist, it's also good to plan for what will happen if something is compromised in the system, and looking specifically at who would be liable. There isn't any framework there today that really provides some sort of legal certainty for all the different participants in online transactions, and that's something that we'll need in order to provide a foundation for the ecosystem to thrive. So NSTIC is it's a key administration cybersecurity program in large part because the way that we authenticate online today does cause so many different security problems in this country. As I mentioned earlier, when you look at the top vectors of attack that hackers and criminals and fraudsters executed in data breaches last year, 5 of the top 6 vectors of attack were all tied to exploiting different weaknesses of passwords, whether it be something that you could simply guess a password because somebody was using 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or password as their password, or they would be reusing a password from another site that had been hacked and then could be used to get into that site. It's not particularly difficult for hackers to force you to download malware or trick you to download malware that would then put a keylogger on your computer that they could then use to steal your password. Phishing attacks remain prevalent. There are so many different vulnerabilities that we have as a country, and it's really not just looking at the government where this is still an issue in some agencies, but really looking across the commercial market space. Almost every major attack that you see written about in cyberspace in the newspapers and the magazines is tied one way or another to the fact that we've got passwords at the center of them. So part of that solution is coming up with something that's more secure. How can you actually create a way for people to easily access security tokens that would enable multi-factor authentication. And the sooner we can start to increase the number of factors that people have to use when they authenticate, the more we can raise the bar for folks who are trying to get into these systems to have to spend a lot more time and resources to do so. I think probably the single lesson that we've learned the most in the 18 to 20 months since the strategy was first signed by the president is you need to build coalitions. If you're really trying to catalyze a marketplace, this identity ecosystem that the NSTIC calls for, you have a whole lot of different types of stakeholders who are going to have a lot to say about it. Everything from major industries like the financial sector or those in the healthcare space that are regulated to major industries that aren't regulated, like a lot of the tech companies out in Silicon Valley. You've got privacy and consumer advocates. You have a lot of others in the space who have been, had a lot to say about this topic for quite some time. We have a need to get them all working together to actually create a framework for the identity ecosystem. So we did this back in August when we created a new identity ecosystem steering group funded by NIST for 2 years through a grant to try and actually convene all these different stakeholders and have them start working on the challenging task of coming up with a framework for the ecosystem called the NSTIC. The group now has about 1,100 participants from more than 420 companies and organizations and a number of interested individuals as well. They've established committees on things like standards, security, contracts and liability, privacy, usability, and great work is happening each week. But it is certainly a challenge keeping what is a very diverse group on track. And I think a lesson learned more than anything else is it's very important to not only ensure that we take the time to listen in our office to all of the different unique stakeholder perspectives, but also make sure that we get the different stakeholders to spend time listening to each other. The more we can do that, the more quickly we'll be able to make some real progress in this space.